Hello, you guys. Welcome to our social studies lesson for the week. We are starting a unit on slavery. And slavery is a big reason why the Civil War was fought. There was many people who wanted to end slavery because they thought it was wrong, and there was many people who believed that slavery was okay and for us to continue it. So that's one of the main things that we are going to discuss this week is slavery. So you've got this chart in your bag, and the first thing we're going to do is fill out this what I already know column. So the first question says, what is freedom? So in here, in this box, I want you to write everything you know about freedom. And then what is slavery, right? Everything you know about slavery. Where did slavery exist, right? Everywhere you know slavery existed. What was life like for enslaved people in the United States? Write what you know here. Then turn it over. We do the same thing. How did enslaved people resist bondage? Fill it in. How was American slavery connected to race? Fill it in. How was slavery ended in the United States? Fill it in. And then last, how was slavery connected to the Civil War? Go ahead and fill that in. So you need to fill in the what I already know column on both sides. Go ahead and pause the video for a minute while you fill in those columns. Alrighty. So now we are going to fill in the next set by going through this. So our first one on side A, so we are going to write in the what I learned column now. And it says, what is freedom? So let's get started here. This is what you want to write in that box. Being free means being able to choose what your life looks like without interference from others. If you need to, you can pause the video right here and write that down. People and institutions can restrict people's freedom. They do this by making rules and enforcing them through punishments. People can also restrict freedom by intimidating people into taking certain actions. Question 2, what is slavery? So under the what I learned column, you're going to write, slavery is when a person owns another person as property. Go ahead and pause it if you need to fill in your box. When people are enslaved, they do not have freedom. This means that enslavers control what job they do, what they eat, where they live, and many other parts of their lives. The main purpose of enslaving people is to make money. Slavery has been allowed in many societies throughout history. Slavery was legal in what is now the United States for hundreds of years. All right, question 3, where did slavery exist? So this is our third box down under what I learned. Slavery existed around the world before the European colonization of the Americas. It looked different depending on the time and place. So where did slavery exist? You can write all over the world. For example, Europeans have a long history of enslaving people. Slavery was widespread in the Roman Empire. It was also used during the Crusades. Slavery was also common in Africa and the Americas before European contact. For instance, Arab traders enslaved and sold millions of Africans beginning in the 8th century. In the Americas, enslavement was common in the Mayan and Aztec empires. In both Africa and the Americas, most enslaved people were war captives. When Europeans colonized the Americas, they enslaved indigenous people. So indigenous is another word for native, so the people who were here, the Native Americans. European colonists enslaved millions of indigenous people to make money. This led to widespread warfare in the Americas. Slavery devastated indigenous peoples who were already weakened by European-introduced diseases. Because of the combined effects of disease, slavery, and war, the indigenous population in the Americas declined from 60 million people to as few as 4 million by the 1600s. European slave trades changed the existing slave trade in Africa. Europeans built colonies in the Americas using enslaved labor. As the colonies grew, so did the demand for enslaved people. This greatly expanded the African slave trade. At least 12.5 million Africans were captured and forced onto ships going to the Americas, where they were sold. The Middle Passage was the voyage of enslaved people from the west coast of Africa to the Americas. The journey was long, dangerous, and difficult. Many captured Americans died. many captured Africans died on their journey from their homes to the Americas. So this is a picture of a slave ship, and all those black lines are people. They would lay them side by side, head to feet, and they couldn't move. And that ship ride was anywhere from 2 to 3 months. And it was terrible, terrible conditions. Okay, question 4. So the last box on the first side. What was it like to be enslaved in the United States? Enslavers forced enslaved people to work. This created money for the enslavers. Enslaved people did many different kinds of work. Many enslaved people worked in fields as agricultural laborers. Other worked as skilled laborers like blacksmiths, carpenters, dressmakers, gunsmiths, and more. Enslaved women did many kinds of work, including field work and household work like cooking and cleaning. The forced labor of enslaved people built many important buildings. For example, the White House, the U.S. Capitol, and major American railroads were built by enslaved people. Enslaved people had families that could be split up at any time. Enslavers often separated families to make more money or as a punishment. Once separated, it was difficult for families to reunite. Enslaved people tried to maintain their cultures and traditions. Music was very important to enslaved people. In fact, the music they created shapes popular music today. Enslaved people told stories to pass on their history, culture, and teachings. For example, the Bear Rabbit folktales originated among the enslaved African population as a way to teach survival skills to their children. All right, go ahead and flip your page over. We're now on question 5. How did enslaved people resist bondage? So how did they resist being slaves? In every place and time, enslaved people sought freedom. It was common for enslaved people to resist their bondage in everyday ways. Everyday acts of resistance included, these are things you can write down, working slowly, breaking tools, pretending to be sick, avoiding work, and running away for short periods of time. Another act of resistance was learning to read and write, which was illegal for enslaved people. Some enslaved people tried to rebel. Rebellions were difficult and mostly unsuccessful because the people in power had more weapons and resources to put down rebellions. Some enslaved people tried to escape. Escape was very difficult and rare. However, some people managed to run away from slavery. Enslaved people who escaped were called fugitive slaves. People chased after them because there was often a money reward for returning escaped people to slavery. Enslaved people resisted attempts to strip away from their humanity. They did this by forming families, maintaining cultural traditions, and through religious worship. Question 6. How was American slavery connected to race? Differences can make people feel that some people are better than others. This can lead people to treat others badly. In America, racial differences were used to justify slavery. American slavery came to be associated with blackness. White people developed racist ideas to justify enslaving people of color. The power of ownership made people feel that they were better than enslaved people. Perceptions of racial differences remain in the United States today. These perceptions continue to impact whether all people are treated equally. Question 7. How was slavery ended in the United States? Many people worked to end slavery. People who wanted to end slavery were called abolitionists. Once they escaped, many people who had been enslaved worked to change the laws that allowed slavery. Not every white person agreed with slavery. Some joined groups that tried to convince people in power to end slavery. Although it was difficult, slavery eventually became illegal. This happened after the Civil War with the passing of the 13th Amendment. So that's what you should write in your box, 13th Amendment. And our last question, how was slavery connected to the Civil War? Slavery was the main cause of the Civil War. People in the United States did not agree about slavery. Some people believed slavery was wrong. Others didn't mind slavery existing in the South, but didn't want it to expand to new places. And others wanted to spread slavery to the new states. People in the last group decided to succeed or leave the United States so they could continue enslaving people. The United States, or the Union, went to war to stop some states from leaving. This war is called the American Civil War. As the Union Army won victories, many enslaved people freed themselves by escaping to the free side. Thousands of Black Americans helped the Union Army by fighting and spying. When the Union finally won the war, its leaders decided to end slavery. All right, so you guys need to make sure you have that paper all filled out. You can watch this video more than once if that helps. This paper is due back on May 3rd. Thanks, guys.